All right, soft sand's not the best. I will say that right now.
Who survives an IED attack?
It was like a fist-sized piece of shrapnel. And from the angle, it probably passed about a foot to the left of my head.
Cross-trains into public affairs.
Regardless of how many people I had, my teams were always expected to put out the same amount of content.
Serves 20 years in the military, founds a nonprofit.
For me, this is deeply personal. This is a calling. This is a passion. This is a purpose.
And then writes a book on AI.
AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use it will.
Meet Aaron Knowles, today's guest on Civvies.
Taking care of yourself as a civilian is not a failure. Doing what you need to do to take care of you and your family is not a failure. Advocating for yourself is not a failure.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Holman, an Army veteran who served in the Medical Service Corps. These days, I work as a technical recruiter in the cleared space here at MetroStar. We know how important these conversations are to the military community, and we're honored to provide a platform for sharing insights, making connections, and building resources for transitioning service members. This is Civvies, a podcast by MetroStar. Welcome to MetroStar's Civvies Podcast, where we are making it our mission to make your military transition just a little bit better by sharing the stories of others that have gone before you. I'm your host, Stephanie Holman, and joining me today is Aaron Knowles in the MetroStar studio. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to have you and hear more about your story. I want to get this right for you and our audience so they know your background. You are a 20-year veteran of the Army.
Yes.
Twice deployed to Iraq.
Yes.
You survived an IED attack. Can I just touch you for a second? Glad you're here. Survived it.
Your hands are cold.
A published author, which we're going to get into. You're also a freelance writer for Clearance Jobs, founder of Shred the Stress, which we're going to talk about this one wheel in front of us here later on. And you willingly threw yourself out of a perfectly good airplane at some point with the Army. So thanks again for joining us, Aaron.
Absolutely. It's honestly my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I'm going to start a little bit differently this time. You've lived such a life. You've been through a lot of experiences. I know your time is valuable. Why come on Civvies? Why take time out of your day to join us here on Civvies with, talking about transition stories for military veterans?
Well, for me, it's a very personal mission. It's as somebody who has recently who is going through the transition process, because it's a unique process for every mm-hmm. veteran, for every family member. It is unique because we all, just like trauma, just like, any experience, we all kind of face it and incorporate it and, remember it differently. And honestly, for about everybody, it's not easy. And if I can in any way with my writing, with my, meditation practices, with my nonprofit, any of the work that I do, it is all intentional to help that process, to help other veterans. Doesn't matter which branch, which service. We all need a little bit of help, and that's what wisdom is. Wisdom is passing on knowledge that you've already experienced to make the next generation or those coming after you have to face a little bit less hardship. And so that's pretty much, I feel like, why I'm on this planet. And that's my intention, is to make it better. Well,
thank you again for being here. And I want to jump right into your story. I know we have limited time today, but tell me about your time in the Army. You served for 20 years. I mentioned that before, but you actually started as I want to get this right, heavy wheeled vehicle operator. And then at some point you transitioned into public affairs. So just tell me about it.
Yes. So I joined as an 88 Mike heavy wheeled vehicle operator. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri was my basic in AIT, learned how to drive all matters of trucks, drove in, Germany, drove in Korea, all these different locations, every kind of major, massive vehicle that the military has to offer. And I enjoyed every minute of it. Driving was always my passion growing up. I loved driving. It was kind of my, way of zenning.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if it was, kind of a mental release.
I really enjoyed it. I loved what I did. And, obviously had some close calls during some deployments, not being in a truck, being on top of a gun truck. I was a 50 cal gunner for both deployments and, also doing some logistician work. And then at one point, in my career, I want to say it was about 8 years in, 7.5 years, 8 years, I got to the point in rank where you no longer drive. You're kind of, you're a supervisor. So
right.
I lost that kind of Zen-like aspect of my job. And at that point I was going to college using my tuition assistance. And I took a photography course because I really wanted to learn how to develop film. Mm-hmm. That was always the inspiration for photography, was learning how to develop film, because I thought it was just an art in itself. And I went through the course. My instructor at the college was like, "You have a great eye. Why don't you go talk to the newspaper of the college and see if you can do some work?"
Very
and
cool.
I was like, absolutely. They told me that I can make some money. So who doesn't like making a little bit extra money?
Right.
So I did a couple of stories. My first story was on a dragon boat races in Washington State, and it was amazing. Took the stories, the photos, turned them in, mm-hmm. and then they said, "Okay, yeah, if you want to write also, we'll pay you for that, and then will you make a little bit more?" I was like, "Who doesn't love making a little bit extra money on the side?" I know, I do. So I started writing, and then they liked that, and I just fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, what I'd previous experience or with creative writing. It was something completely different. So I was like, I really enjoy this. And so I started looking into what my opportunities were as far as career wise. And
Sure.
the Army had a program at the time called the BEAR program, which is the bonus extension and reenlistment.
Okay.
And it was kind of a gamble. You pick these very undermanned MOSs, mm-hmm. And you go to school. And if you graduate, you are certified in the MOS, and that's your primary job.
Sure.
If you fail,
where are we going?
Needs the Army.
Okay.
And if you ever hear needs the Army,
it could be anything.
It
right.
is not a fun, thing to face. And so, I was told it was an exceptionally hard school, and I was also a staff sergeant at the time. Mm-hmm. I was the oldest in my class. I was the most senior ranking in my class. Mm-hmm. And so I actually outranked some of my instructors.
Okay.
And, I put my head down. I studied, I worked, I wrote down everything, and I managed to pass. I was pleasantly surprised.
You were all in.
Yeah, I was all in. Because I loved every moment of it. And when I graduated, I got some accolades from the instructors and from the commandant of the school, because I was, I was the leader of the entire course for the entire time. Anyways, small stuff like that. But yeah. And then I was immediately sent back to Fort Stewart, Georgia. And then what I found out later on was not the right way of doing things. I was immediately thrust into leadership positions instead of being just a public affairs soldier. Oh,
gotcha. Okay.
So
curveball.
Yeah, curveball. So I immediately become the NCOIC of I think it was 2nd Brigade, 3rd ID. Mm-hmm. And from there just became NCOIC of every unit that I was ever in. And, the Army started, my branch manager started sending me everywhere to pretty much fix shops, mm-hmm. and to kind of improve the process there, because they saw how much passion I had in that job. And yeah, so I did that for 13 years until I retired.
Yeah. What our audience doesn't know is we actually met at a Clearance Jobs event. You're a freelance writer for Clearance Jobs. And so you interviewed me.
Yes.
And I've shared this with you many times, but I was so impressed with your interviewer skills. And I left that thinking, who the hell is this guy? Right. And so I looked you up, nothing stalkerish, but your LinkedIn is public. And as I was reading through your experience, it made more sense as to how you developed your skills, right, to that point. I also want to just go back a little bit here, because I was surprised that you had survived an IED attack. That
yes.
You're very, very easy to talk to. You seem very even and calm and available. I would never have guessed, right? And so it reminds me that we interface and we talk to folks every day who we have no idea what they've been through, what part of their stories included. And so it's something I try to be very mindful of, right? Is
yes.
to never judge, right? And also never just take someone at face value, because there's so much more behind their story. If you're willing to share, can you take us back to the IED attack and kind of what that day looked like?
Yeah. So To be honest, I have a little bit of trouble remembering which came first. It was the rollover, the IED. I believe it was the IED. But I do remember the day perfectly. And it was, we were actually heading back to our point of origin, and my vehicle, I was the gunner. We were the rear vehicle of the convoy. And this was kind of fabricated up armored Humvee. So, this is one of the vehicles that when we took it to Iraq, we actually took it to a facility and they just kind of made armor for some of our vehicles. And we were driving through this checkpoint for the local security, security force. And during that time, the tactic of the insurgents was to basically kidnap or kill the security forces at those checkpoints, either switch them out with their own personnel, or as in this case, just bury an IED where the checkpoint was. So nobody really paid attention to it. So we go through the checkpoint. As our vehicle passes, there's this massive explosion that happens probably about maybe 5-6 feet away from me. It peppers the inside. So it basically completely just turns into just like this shower of shrapnel, and it all starts puncturing the cab of the vehicle, going and bouncing off the roof, hitting like a piece of hot shrapnel, bounced off the roof and went down the back of the shirt of one of my driver, who actually has like a pretty massive burn from it now. I was facing the rear, and I just remember, the blast. I remember my Kevlar like hitting the back of my skull.
Wow. It moved it all the way back.
And then everything like kind of shook. There was sparks, there was smoke. And then I remember also there was like this fist-sized hole that went through the bottom of our trunk, through the top. And from the angle, it probably passed about a foot to the left of my head. Oof. And it was like a fist-sized piece of shrapnel. And it disabled our vehicle, not the engine, but pretty much blew 3 of the tires. We had a spare on the back. And I consider myself very lucky because even though JP8, which is the fuel that our vehicle ran on, it has a very high flash point, the fact that it was that close to an IED and we had these massive fuel tanks for extra fuel on the back of the Humvee, they did not ignite. They just basically got peppered and started leaking and pouring all over the ground. Right. So that could have been very bad for me. And luckily, none of that happened. I had some cuts on my face, and we pulled as far away from the blast point, the kill zone. I remember my team pulled me out of the vehicle, checked me out, make sure I wasn't like hit anything, because they were like, "Oh, you're in shock." And it was amazing. In the moment, our entire team you never know what's going to occur in a moment like that. So our entire team just kicked in. Everybody's like, raising the vehicle up, taking their spare tires, putting them on our vehicles so that we can get out of there as quickly as possible when we get back, and for lack of a better term, all is well.
You touched on one of the 2 questions I had as you were telling your story. Number one, did you realize that you'd been hit, that it was a blast? Like in that moment, did you instantly know, or was it just total confusion? And,
to be honest, it's one of those times where you don't know how you're going to react until it happens. You see in the movies when just like a blast occurs and everybody's just kind of like, what's going on? And I think that's kind of like, you have that split second of what is occurring right now. But I remember my first instinct was my training kicked in, and I took my right hand and I put it on my driver's shoulder, and I put my left hand on the TC shoulder, and I said, "Are you guys okay?" Okay. And that was the first thing that I did as we're in, and they said, they tap my hand. That's our kind of signal, and we're good. We take off, and it was in the moment. It was that was kind of the first and only like action that you can take. And then again, like for me, it's just like, you start coming into your body and realizing like what just occurred. And it's like, wow, is everybody okay? We're okay. Let's get out of here. Because the last thing you want to do is slow anybody else down, because if there's a follow-on attack, if there's anything else that can occur, because that's generally what happens. The common tactic was hit the vehicle. If they don't stop, then continue hitting them. And if they do stop, converge on the the actual like convoy. And luckily we were able to get out there, limp the vehicle as far as we could to get the tires changed.
Yeah. That was, my second question was, does your training kick in?
Yes.
Right. Or are you just completely stunned? So it sounds like your training, kicked in.
Again, it's one of those times where it's like, you don't ever anticipate, like, people are always like, oh, I know what I do in that situation.
Right. Right.
And that's the voice I give everybody. I know what I do. But yeah, for us, and that time, and I mean, like it just gets like beaten into your head, and like, you continue to, it becomes muscle memory.
Right.
And I think it also deals with caring about the people to your left and right, because you realize in your brain that if I don't bring myself back to the moment, then I am potentially a risk to those that I care about. And that's the last thing you want to be.
What year did this occur in?
Yes. So that happened 2005. My first deployment was pretty much all of 2005. I think we deployed right after New Year's Day.
Okay.
Or actually, it might have been like Christmas of 2004, but it was very much around that time frame.
Yeah. The reason I ask about the year, I'm somewhat of a military brat. My parents were government workers, worked overseas. And so at the time in the early 2000s, we were stationed on Leighton Barracks, which is in Würzburg, Germany. It's an big infantry unit there. So I was very young at the time, 18, 19, around those years. And, as far as social media and that sort of thing, it didn't really exist back then. We had AFN, the Armed Forces Network, and then Stars and Stripes, which I worked at the BX, and I would read the Stars and Stripes every day. And in the Stars and Stripes, you would see the listed casualties, the soldiers, and a lot of them, they were from our community. They were from Würzburg, right? So we saw, families leaving, and it just it struck me with your story and the years, and I was thinking, gosh, I could have been in that AFI's break room reading about you had you not made it out of that situation. So it just gives me chills, and I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you for sharing that experience. And I appreciate it because it has a lot, it relates to what you're doing now, with a 501 organization that you've started, which I want to hear about. Yeah.
So, I want to say it was 2021 when I actually got everything kind of together for Shred the Stress, which is, for me, it's a passion. My first deployment, my first unit, there are so many friends that I still have, and there are so many friends that are not around anymore. And because of that, because of what I've seen members of the military community go through when they separate from the military, especially being a younger soldier, and they always, my guys always made fun of me. They're like, you're a lifer. Come to find out they were right. And these guys weren't. They separated, and it was mid to late 2000s when they got out, and that was a different time for transitional support, transitional resources. And I just saw one by one them falling to these issues that somebody could have been out there to help with another resource. And so, I felt the need to start something that was non-traditional. And so Shred the Stress was born because, probably like around 2016, I discovered a device like this, the One Wheel. And, when I started writing the One Wheel, it was very much riding, if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, people say two-wheel therapy, or, the therapy of just getting out on the road. Same therapy I used to feel when I was out driving.
Right.
And so this was something I could take anywhere. It was like snowboarding. It was like skating. It was like, doing that anywhere. And it just became my own personal therapy, but I didn't realize it.
I was just going to ask, did you know, was that something you were cognitively aware of? And you're like, okay, I need this outlet. I'm getting this.
I had no idea. I just knew how much I enjoyed it. Okay. And then a couple years later, through some financial stuff, PCSing overseas, which I found out it's illegal to write these in Germany, by the way.
Who knew? Okay.
Yeah, found that out. I had to get rid of mine, and I didn't realize like how the effect on my mental health, like not having that outlet, that community of personal electric vehicle, PV riders.
Right.
It's a huge supportive community. It's massive. It's worldwide. And, I think I PCS to Fort Campbell, and I was like, I need this. I need something. So I went out and I bought another one wheel, and immediately was like back again, that feeling. And from there, I think I went to, there's a huge one wheel owners group on Facebook. I think there's up to like 50,000, 60,000 members. And I started a poll in there, and I said, hey, does anybody agree that riding these things feels like it's therapeutic? And it was a resounding yes. Like 99% of people were like, yes, except for, you had a couple of trolls who were like, what are you, stupid? But everybody was like, yes. And because of that, and I actually took that, screenshots of that post and some of the comments, and that was part of my pitch to companies for support.
Okay.
And it was like, this proves that this is like therapy. And I started doing more research, and there's this, this philosophy called the flow state, where, there's a doctor out there that's researched it. I can't pronounce his name, but he has, he figured out, and I kind of attribute it to as when we're younger, we're out having fun. Time flies when you're having fun because you're so focused. You're not focused on the stress.
Moment.
You're in the moment. You're living.
Moment. Yeah.
And that's what these, devices give to people. So I was like, okay, how can I create an organization that does not, that removes the barrier? Because they're not cheap.
I was just going to ask, what are we talking?
So there's different models,
Okay.
I won't go too deep into it because, hashtag not a sponsor.
Gotcha.
But they can go up to the newest models are like $3,400.
That's expensive.
Yeah. And so not every service member and their family can afford to just drop that on something that seems like it may not be the answer. And so what I decided to do was I decided to create an organization that removed that price tag and that obstacle for families and for service members and for, veterans, so that they could experience what I love and maybe experience some type of release, some type of relaxation. And I've been operating now for over 4 years. I've never charged a single penny to anybody to participate.
It's fantastic.
And I have probably 5 one wheels. I have an electric scooter. I have my own personal electric unicycle that I'm struggling to learn how to ride because that thing is difficult. And then,
but you enjoy it.
I do enjoy it.
And you want to master it, probably.
And then I even have an electric go-kart as well.
Nice.
And people love it. Like, one of the most rewarding moments that I can think back to is when I participated in a health and wellness organizational day for a unit back at Fort Campbell, because my unit, so I was with, 5th Special Forces Group at Campbell, and they were like, we love what you're doing because you can offer it to this unit as well. And we support you if you go outside the unit as well and want to do it. So I was like, thank you so much. And so I had this day where I got to have like squads of soldiers come up, and they were like messing with each other, having a good time. And then there was this moment where this dad was teaching his daughter how to ride, and he's just like holding her hand. And it was just, that's
a beautiful moment.
Beautiful moment of them experiencing that moment together and just smiling and having a great time. Like, that's what, cemented. Again, there's like been other moments that have cemented this cause as a passion and a purpose of mine. I'm
ready to potentially shred some stress. I know we've got a helmet behind you with the MetroStar logo. So we're going to see how this one wheel goes. Yeah. I'll be there with you the whole time. Holding my hand. Yes. Maybe. I actually had, so when I first started this, One Wheel, Future Motion, the company that created the One Wheel, flew me to an event in Austin, Texas, and taught me how to teach using their method to teach riders how to ride these things. So I am taught by the professionals how to teach people to ride these things. Sounds good. All right. You talked about just how inclusive and welcoming the community is earlier. One thing that we do as service members when we transition out, whether it's negative, positive, intentional or not, we put up this barrier because we think that we have to re-identify who we are, and we're not part of that military community anymore, which is not true, because we put up this wall and we separate ourselves from this support system that we've had for potentially years. Like,
half of my life was in the military. Over half of my life was in the military.
Yeah,
So
20 years.
to cut myself off from that is such a detriment. But if you can find an additional community to be that safety net, which is what the PEV community is, that's what Shred the Stress introduces to them and shows them that there is more out there, more people out there willing to support them, and they don't have to pay anything for it. It's not a pay to play type
Just
thing.
show up.
Just show up and be and have interest and be like, that's cool. Like, are you regular or goofy footed? I guess I'll stay off the path for now.
So we're talking snowboarding.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
Yeah, I'm right. I was always goofy.
Okay.
But I would alternate.
Yeah. So put your right foot here first, okay? And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna lift up and then put it on the front foot pad. And don't lean in just yet, but you see how it's activated?
Yep.
So now we're gonna lean forward, okay? And I got you. It's gonna kick in, you're gonna feel it kick in.
Oh.
There you go. All right, there you go. There you go, now you're carving.
Yeah. This is awesome. I wish I was not in boots.
I saw somebody riding this whole weekend and they were in cowboy boots, which I was
No way.
extremely
Seriously?
impressed about, yeah.
I don't know. We might have to get a couple Metro Star ones for the office.
I'm gonna hold your backhand, so.
Okay.
Okay. I'm right here with you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's hard not to look down.
Yeah, it is. So lift your heel,
Which one?
for your front heel, sorry. So disengage, there you go.
Okay.
And now you can step off. I had the support of the units, and then I had the support of like the USO and the MWR on post, because those, I'll say this, as somebody who's been in the military for 20 years, the USO and the MWR, I mean,
Yeah.
they're so pivotal in taking care of service members, and they're also part of the inspiration. I did a program at Fort Campbell, and it was called, I think it was called Operation Song. That's what it was called, Operation Song. And they brought in songwriters who had been a part of like super famous produced songs by celebrities, and they brought them in and they sat down with you. It was like a whole day process.
Sure.
And you wrote a song that either kind of conveyed something that had been digging at you, or something that just like something that was deeply meaningful. And it was an amazing experience. I actually wrote the song that I used to propose to my wife. And yeah, that experience of having, like taking out of like the office and every day and kind of like being the sole focus. Like I told my wife I was off doing some mission or something. I wouldn't have phone service. So I was like, just don't bug me. So yeah, I spent the day like doing this activity and working on this song. And then at the end of the day, you get to sit there and perform it actually in front of the group, which is nerve wracking, but it was amazing as well. And you leave with a guitar, like they give you a guitar.
Oh, very cool.
And then the songwriter will take the song back and they'll actually produce it professionally in a studio. And then they send you the copy. And it was amazing to hear. And like my wife was just automatically just crying. And so it was a amazing experience. And so something like that, which I had never really had the experience of doing, again, I was just like, this is what we need more of.
Right.
And so again, and it was completely free. They didn't charge us something. And it was just an experience that you could obviously walk away from with a little bit extra, but Shred the Stress, I want to get to the point where I can give out boards or help people at least like afford them.
And I wouldn't give it up. It's been a journey. You never really know how like the people's like true intentions until you start a nonprofit and you ask for assistance.
So that's a fair point. Let's talk about that. So how did you start the nonprofit? Did you know someone? Did they walk you through all of the paperwork? I have no idea what that process entails.
I had no idea either. I did what everybody probably does and went to the internet and started Googling. And initially, all of the answers were that it is a difficult process, and they're not lying. And a lot of the answers also said that if you don't know what you're doing, it can take a long time to accomplish it and reach your goal of getting it approved. So I did what I thought was the right decision, and I paid a company probably like $600-700 to try and get the process started and to get the paperwork submitted. And they drug their feet, for 6-7 months. And I kept giving them they would email me, say, hey, we need a little more information. So I'd send them the information. Then a month later, I'd be like, hey, where are we at? Then they'd send me another questionnaire. I said, I already answered these. Why don't you talk to the last person that I spoke to? So it was just a lot of
miscommunication and delays.
And at one point I'm like, this is too important to keep waiting for you. I want my money back. And so they refunded me all my money, and I downloaded all the paperwork, and I sat there, and I probably took a couple of days, maybe a week, and I did it all myself. And then like a month and a half later, I was an approved 501c3.
Wow.
And I'm so glad that I went that route, because I've had multiple other people in other communities come to me and ask me for assistance. And I'm more than willing to help other people, like get their nonprofit, give them advice and talk to them. And, with my experience in public affairs, brand management, social media management, community management, all that stuff, it has given me the opportunity to be value added to not only the community of veterans, nonprofits, entrepreneurs. Like if I can help somebody, I will. I've been doing some pro bono work for a local barbershop in Brooklyn, New York. Shout out Cousins Barbershop. And he's just an amazing guy who helps out not only the veteran community, he teaches on base, like classes.
So he's sharing his knowledge.
And sharing his knowledge. Like I want to support and be value added to my community, no matter what community that is.
I hate that you went through that process, right? You lost 7 or 8 months of time, which you can't get back. But then you figured it out, right? You walk the walk, and now you can talk it probably pretty effectively to other veterans that are looking to do the same thing. So I have to ask, would you do things differently if you had, a second chance at that, or was there value to going to this company and saying, hey, here's what I want to do? And then did you take more value away from learning that lesson, right? Because now I think you're dangerous. Now
Yes.
You know enough to figure it out.
I would absolutely go the same route and do it all again, because it takes that experience to know that they are not in it to help you. They're in it for the money, which is obvious. They're a commercial company, but when it comes to your mission, no matter what it is, it's not going to be as important to anybody else but you. For me, this is deeply personal. This is something, this is a calling. This is a passion. This is a purpose. And for somebody else who's just doing it for the money, it will never mean as much to them as it will mean to you.
Right. So I love this transition point because it relates so much to military transition, right? And you just hit on what I deeply believe in. No one will care about your transition more than you.
Absolutely.
You have to do the work. So tell me about your military transition and what that looked like.
I'll tell you, it's been an emotional roller coaster. And a lot of that is because we are told as service members that when we are getting ready to exit the service, that no matter which way, no matter how, whether it's retirement, just, natural attrition, whatever.
Right.
We are told that we are going to be our doors are going to be broken down by companies that are wanting to hire us because of our skills, our adaptability, our diligence, our dedication. And it's not true, unfortunately. And that is, I don't want to say it's necessarily a lie, but it is. And it is fed to us because it makes us feel what we are given with the transition assistance programs are enough, and they're not enough. I would challenge any veteran, any service member getting ready to transition out for any type of reason to put as much effort into the transition process as early as possible and just build into it, because it does not matter. Again, I've been trying to work with several companies to have them send me to transition assistance programs and briefings around the country, because I want people to know that this class, no matter if it's an executive level class that is given to senior leaders, why there's a difference. I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. Yeah.
But there's a difference in the classes that are given to, junior NCOs, junior soldiers, and senior officers, senior NCOs. All the information is vastly and greatly important to you, no matter what demographic you fall into. But I would challenge any service member to take that transition process serious, write down every question you can, and get some individual coaching. And there are so many different resources out there now that are supplementing what the military is doing, because the military is not doing the best job at it. There are 3 different branches of the government that oversee the transition assistance program.
Right.
And that's insane. We have to take our transitions very seriously, and we cannot allow the information that is just spoken at us to be what we walk away with it.
Right.
We walk away with. And so again, I challenge everybody who is going through or preparing or has gone through it to re-engage everything. And you talked earlier, like I do freelance writing for clearance jobs. And one of the articles that I wrote not too long ago was on the difference between a job convention or a hiring, conference and a resource conference is very different. It's vastly different. And they're always like, it's so ambiguous these days that I can't tell you, and I'll continue to go, but I can't tell you how many conventions and events I've gone to where they're not hiring anybody.
Right.
All they're doing is they're there. It's a cover CYA event put on by the organization, the installation, because they're required to. And the companies they bring in, I would make it a mandatory rule or guideline that any company that participates has a list of jobs that they are looking to fill. Because if they don't have that, it is just a resource fair. And all I'm doing is walking away with another set of microfiber cloths or, like mini fans that run on batteries that'll die in a day and a half, and just a bag full of tchotchkes.
You've gotten a lot of swag. Yeah.
That I do not need, that just sit in a bag somewhere, you know?
Right.
And by the way, if you get any of that stuff, donate it to a VFW, Legion, American Legion, homeless shelter. They can use those things, soaps, all
Don't just throw it away.
Don't just throw it away.
Yeah.
Donate them to a homeless shelter, a women's shelter, one that supports LGBTQ, kids, something like that, because that stuff is so useful instead of just sitting there in your house, like taking up dust. So, but yeah, I challenge these people also that are facilitating these events to ensure that people are being offered jobs. They're being offered more than resources are amazing. I would not be here without the resources that have been offered. But I also go to these events to hand out my resume and be hopefully recruited for a job that I'm passionate about. And we were talking earlier, it hasn't happened yet. And it is a long process, and it's going to be different for everybody. And I just don't lose passion, don't lose hope, because it will get better. And the only thing you can do is put everything you have into it, but also make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. What I kept hearing when you were talking about transition services in my head was there is no 1 through 10 step-by-step guide of here's how you transition. And that's my own personal stake with hosting, MetroStar's Civvies Podcast. Everyone's transition looks a little bit different. Now, there are common themes throughout those transitions, but your transition is going to look very different from someone else's and the next person. So it's really important to, get these stories out. But like you were mentioning, for our service members that are showing up to networking events or hiring fairs, as organizations, we want to make sure we're valuing that person's time, because if, to your point, there is no position available, let's not take someone's time away to where they could,
it's
invest that elsewhere.
It's also a mental health thing as well. If you don't have a position available, let people know. If you're not looking for what they're looking for, or you don't have what they're looking for, let them know. Service members, we can take it. We are not soft skinned. We are not thin skinned. We would rather hear it as it is and then move on to the next opportunity, because honestly, it's just like you said, don't waste people's time. And that's another thing that kind of, I just want to mention real quick also, housing, transitioning out of the military. One of the biggest issues that I face, and I know many other veterans and service members face, is housing. Especially if you live on base in military housing. A lot of military housing, a lot of places, we're not prepared for what it takes to qualify for civilian housing, renting especially. I know some places you have to show that you have made
3 times the income,
3 to 10 times the amount of what the rent is. And if you cannot show that over your last pay stubs, you don't qualify.
Right.
Let me ask you this. How many service members who have just ETS'd or retired have 3 months of pay stubs?
Right.
We don't. So how am I supposed to qualify for this apartment that I've been living in for a year and a half? And now I have to requalify because I just, technically lost my job. And now you're going to kick me out in 30 days because I don't have 3 months of pay stubs. Like there has to be something facilitated there. There has to be a process. And I even spoke to my housing, the development, the rental office. There's nothing in place with them. And I can't imagine that being the same or any different, at any other installation. Yeah.
It brings me back to my higher education days. I worked for a number of universities for a little bit over 10 years. And we would routinely see service members that they were ETSing from the military unexpectedly. They'd never used tuition assistance. And so the next right step for them at that time, because to your point, housing, it's a basic need. Everyone needs it. Their next step that made sense was immediately using the GI Bill, which comes with BAH, basic housing allowance, benefits to survive, right? And so I would have multiple conversations of what that looks like. And it's an option. I wouldn't say it's the best option, but it's an immediate option that fills that need. But at the same time, you have to keep your grades up. There's certain things you have to fulfill academically.
Absolutely. And hopefully it is a certified institution that's not just one that's going to take their money. Yep. Because that was a big deal a few years ago when I first became really started getting deep into public affairs was, I did a story on the TAP program itself and how they were changing some of the requirements for schools that were being solicited by students using TAP or using, the tuition assistance.
Right.
And so at that time, there had been some studies done that when service members had transitioned out and they were progressing in their education, they were not able to either finish or the actual institution was not fulfilling their end of the bargain.
And it might have just been a catalog thing as well, because if you take too long, I can nerd out on this topic. Yeah. If you take too long to essentially complete a degree, the catalog you're under, the year you're under at some point changes. And then the university says, hey, it's great you've been working on this, but the requirements have now changed and you've got 5 more classes.
Yes. But who's checking on the soldier or the service member to make sure that they're aware of this? At the point that they exit, they no longer have that resource.
Right.
And so people were just floundering once they got out, trying to use those resources without any kind of case manager, without any kind of advisor. They were only and a lot of people, again, these are certain skills that come with developing lifestyle habits outside of the military that we don't necessarily develop or atrophy while we're in. And so you don't know what questions to ask unless you go through the situation to ask me. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
That's my favorite quote. You just don't know. A quick go back. So you mentioned earlier, something that you would recommend to a transitioning service member is start looking into resources early, start preparing. I really want to break this down for our audience, because when I hear early, I might have a different timeline than you do. How early? Are you talking about a year out from exiting the military, 2 years out? do you prepare while you're still in?
24 months before terminal leave.
Okay.
That's my recommendation. I believe that's actually the recommendation. That's the guideline for transition assistance itself is 2 years, because you start a year out with getting things in order, and then, or 2 years out, excuse me. And then at a year out is when you should be starting to take your classes. And there's a lot of different organizations in the military that have their own internal transition assistance programs as well. I know like Special Forces, they've started their own program called the Pivot program, which is phenomenal. Big Army can definitely take some notes from that. And, if that was just an experiment that is succeeding, it is very successful. I obviously connected with a lot of my colleagues who were transitioning out or around the time, and I follow their careers, and they've been doing some amazing things, especially in and around the local, like state government, the local county and city governments. And it's great to see. And so I would love to see programs like that, which are, again, it takes the service member out of their job for a specific amount of time. That way they're untouchable by mission, untouchable by taskings, and all they do is focus on transitioning. And that is so necessary
to have that space.
Yes. That separation,
but also the financial foundation to be able to do that.
Exactly.
You have to be able to survive.
Exactly. Unfortunately, my situation did not allow me to do the Skill Bridge program, which is a huge resource. A lot of service members who go through Skill Bridge end up getting hired by that company, because that company is taking time to train and evaluate that person. And if they do well enough, then they might as well offer them a job, because now they have a leg up over somebody who's just picked up off the street. But I'll tell you, last year at Clearance Connect, I asked several questions, and one of the questions was, what about service members who don't have the opportunity or the availability to make that happen, to go through the Skill Bridge program?
Right.
There's not a whole lot there once you're out. There's not a whole lot. There are resources, but it's not the easiest process, again, because once you're out and you're kind of left to your own devices. So I would love to see Skill Bridge programs that are, federally funded and federally supported for those that have transitioned out. And I understand the VA has VR&E. They have their own version of, tuition assistance as well, vocational rehabilitation, so many programs. So those are things, again, that I tell people, as an individual, you need to go research before you even go out, before you're even close to exiting the service, and take advantage. These resources are not just there to help, the masses. Like, as an individual, take advantage of them, because for every person that takes advantage of these resources, there's probably 10 service members that have completely ignored it. Might as well use it.
What were, and take a moment to think about this if you need it. What were some of your biggest missteps when you were transitioning that you look back on and you're like, I shouldn't have done that? Or maybe I could have done it better.
Overconfidence.
Okay.
Again, I believed that I was going to be just recruited or headhunted right out of the gate. And that led to a very big crash mental health wise, emotionally. It was very, like I said, it was an emotional roller coaster was my transitional. That's the way I describe my transitional process, because I was like, why am I not being hired? I am an expert in my field. I have, and I put on my resume, like that I am an expert, like not in those words necessarily.
But you meet the job requirements.
I meet job requirements. I know the responsibilities. I know the duties. So why am I not being hired? And I let that get to me. And at one point I started just applying for jobs that I didn't even want, didn't even like. I'll tell you, I worked at a gym for one day.
Okay.
I went to work in the morning for training, went through all the training. At the end of the day, I sent an email and I I submitted for resignation. And I realized it's because, I can't just sit there and not challenge myself. I want a job. I need a job. I want to take care of my family. I want to take care of myself, but I cannot do it at the detriment of my own mental and emotional well-being.
Right.
you know.
You tried, right? You
Yes.
showed up to the gym, and then you probably had a moment of like, oh boy, I don't want to do this. You had the courage to say, I'm not going to. And let me just send, a nice email. Appreciate your time. But this isn't for me. It's probably better. The gym probably appreciates it. Let's be honest about it.
I did everything the whole day, every 15 minutes, you're supposed to go in there and wipe down the machines. You're supposed to make sure that everybody's using the machines properly.
Yeah.
Putting stuff back, making sure it's clean. I did that all day long because I was dedicated to what I did. Once I got home, that's when my mind kicked on and I started thinking about, is this worth it? Is this something that I can do long-term? And because to be honest, the parameters of what the job required and what they posted were a little bit different because I thought that I was going to be a little bit more involved in the community and helping people instead of just sitting at a desk and being in charge of making sure the gym was clean. So, make sure when you're looking at, that's another lesson learned is when you're looking at job descriptions that you look at the entire thing and kind of think of best and worst case scenario of what that job's going to encompass. And can you handle it at its worst?
Right. And then what do you do if it's not what you want to do? And I so want to dive into your self-awareness, right? Of being able to have that internal conversation, and find that quiet space to really sit with your feelings and realizing like, I don't want to do this. Right. And now what does that mean? It means you're having to send an uncomfortable email or have an uncomfortable conversation, and then you're looking again.
Yes.
So walk me through how you navigated that.
I don't know if this is the same experience as anybody else had, but I'll be honest, it was a very, very difficult thing for me to do because I think that still had a lot to do. And I think it was necessary. I think it had a lot to do with how I felt about being in the military. Because the moment that I thought that I cannot do this, I felt like I was like leaving them, high and dry. Right. That I was, I don't know, like I just, I was going to be looked down upon. I was going to be considered weak or like, high and mighty or just not considered like a team player.
Right.
And that gutted me. And actually, I'll be honest, it happened again at another job and I felt even worse about it because I really liked everybody that I worked with during that day. I had so many great interactions with people that I was going to work with, but like pay wise and everything, again, it wasn't suitable for my lifestyle. Right. And again, I had to make that decision. And even then after that one, which was months later, I think I even had like a very kind of a severe, like depressive episode for a couple of days afterwards, because I felt like I just did something completely wrong.
Right.
And it was very hard to process. And once I processed that it was for the best for myself and for my family, I started coming out of that state and I'm like, okay, now it's for the better. And now I know, and I'm in a really good place at the moment right now. I'm still job seeking, but I've made the decision again with like putting my book out and pursuing, my meditation, instructor certification and doing all these things for me. I'm investing in myself and I'm in such a happier place because yes, I still want a job that I can love and devote myself to. But I'm improving myself for the future, no matter what happens. And I know that I'm on the right path. So I feel so much better about that. So I needed to go through those hard times to realize what my focus and what my passion and purpose really needed to be when it came to being a civilian.
So can you say and sorry guys, you're going to have to bleep me out, as shitty as that felt, was it still a good experience to go through for your own growth and just achieving this level of kind of freedom with being able to choose what you want to do and not being ashamed of that choice?
I do believe it was a good process to go through, to experience. Is it going to happen again? Probably. Is it going to be like, am I going to like look for a job that I'm not going to want again? No, absolutely not. But is it possibly going to happen in the future at some point? Am I going to feel that same way? It could happen. I don't know. I'm going to prepare myself for it. And that's what I'm doing with these things is preparing myself again with mindfulness and being aware of, who I am and what I need to be the best of me. But yeah, it was absolutely,
Right.
it was a horrible experience, but I did need to process that. And that's the thing, as a service member, we are taught those military values, no matter what branch. We all have our different values. For Army, it's the leadership, loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity, personal courage. All of these things are, ingrained in us to like our foundational level. And we feel this need to be, to take what's given to us and to run with it and to be successful. Because if we're not, we fail. But taking care of yourself as a civilian is not a failure. Doing what you need to do to take care of you and your family is not a failure. Advocating for yourself is not a failure. Standing up for yourself is a must.
Right. It just might feel really uncomfortable. Until you do it a few times.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think one thing that resonates with me is it sounds like at some point in your journey, you've challenged your own beliefs, right? I think for a service member that, finds a job, realizes it's not what they were looking for. And then you have all these kind of negative thoughts about what are these, my manager's going to think about me, the organization. And you probably play some of those conversations in your head or make them up. And if we sit with that and go, well, is that the reality? Maybe your manager at the gym was like, I'm bummed. Aaron was cool. I thought he'd work out, but it didn't. And I wish him well. We don't know what the other side of that is. And I think we can just get really lost
Absolutely.
in our own thoughts.
There's that feeling of I think that's a big thing that service members face. Because again, we put out these false expectations that from the outside looking in, that we are going to be considered, like, thought of negatively because we can't, won't, or shouldn't do something. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, we have to be confident in the decisions that we make and stick with them. I mean, it's like being a leader or being somebody who puts himself into a leadership position. I don't care if you're a specialist, a E4, E1, whatever, 06, 05, 04, like, everybody has the capacity to lead, set the example, and advocate for themselves and others. And that's being a leader. And that's being like, that's caring. And, it is a skill that, we learn in very different ways in and out of the service.
When you were going through that kind of tough time of experiencing, starting with the gym and it wasn't for you, what did your support system look like? Like, when you got home, were you talking to a family member and just kind of de-stressing? And did you have anyone?
I did. I have my wife who's amazing. She was so supportive because she saw that exactly the way that she knew it before I did. She's like, you don't need to do that job. Like, you don't need that job. Okay. Like, you need something that is going to be what you love to do. Like, you need something that you can be passionate about. And it's weird because we develop these philosophies in our life and we develop these ideas of who we want to be and what we want to do. And when times get tough, we feel that we need to step out of that or step away from that and kind of sell ourselves out, so to speak, to just be what we think we need to be, which is like a provider.
Right.
And I think that that's a huge detriment to a lot of our mental health, and our emotional health as veterans and as, transitioning out, is we think that we have to accomplish these things. We think that because we're no longer active duty or whatever in the service, that we're making this guaranteed paycheck, that we are failing our family. Right. Or failing those that matter to us, but we're not. Like, they need us to be around. They need us to be happy. They need us to be, success is different for everybody, and it doesn't have to be found in a paycheck or a job. Even just finding something that you can be passionate about and take care of your family and be there for them and they can be there for you. That's important.
So what have you learned about the importance of self-care?
Oh, self-care. that is a long journey, and that is something that is, again, very individual based.
And do you have to put yourself first to be able to take care of others? Like, what's kind of your thoughts on that?
you should put yourself first. And I tell a lot of people that you should put yourself first, but that looks different to everybody. One of my favorite statements is that you can't pour from an empty vessel.
Yep.
And so if you are not taking care of yourself and filling your own cup before you try and fill other people's and make them feel better, you are pouring from nothing. And it's not going to end up well. It's not going to end well at all. And so you have to take care of yourself. You have to get sleep, give yourself nutrition, self-care, relaxation, breaks from whatever you're doing, because if you continue to put yourself through too much, you're going to burn yourself out in so many different ways, and you cannot continue that, which is then going to make you feel worse. And then it's just going to compact itself even more.
Right. Now I want to switch to something wildly different, which is your book. Tell us about I'm going to say this slow so I get it right, the algorithmic frontier.
Yes. So the algorithmic frontier, which explores the power of AI in social media and content creation. I know, long title. I love the fact that it's long. It's almost ridiculous like me because I'm not short-winded at all.
I practiced this last night, by the way, so you know.
You did well.
Okay, thank you.
During my time in the Army, my last 13 years were as a public affairs NCOIC. And every time I was in an NCOIC position, which was every unit I was in, I never had a full staff. I was always lacking in personnel. I had open billets, and there are always other units that seemed to take priority because either they were deploying or mission set, whatever. Or it was just me because there wasn't anybody else.
Right.
There were several times where it was literally just me.
Was there a continuity book? I have to ask.
It wasn't even, no. I mean, sometimes, but most time, no. It's
probably not.
They're not. Yeah. Like I had to break into Facebook pages and to be able to take them over. But because of that, regardless of how many people I had, I was always expected, and my teams were always expected to put out the same amount of content that a full team was expected to.
Which is a lot of work.
We talked
about this earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's graphics, that's posts on all forms of social media, that's learning new platforms as soon as they come out. That is, again, creating like cut lines for photos, creating videos, graphics, and just so many different types of content. And what I found was, yes, you'd have young soldiers coming in who transition into public affairs. They would come through school, and by the time they got out of school, there was something new that was out there already. And how do you expect this amount of work from somebody who honestly is still learning what the guidances are, what the expectations are? Because just like every commander who has different expectations and different pillars of leadership, different lines of effort, which every leader, when they take over a unit, has their own lines of effort. You have to learn that and you have to implement it. And so that takes time, which you don't have a lot of time to learn. And
it takes time from your family,
exactly.
your friends.
And so I wrote this book because I wanted to give civilian, service members, whomever, I wanted to be able to actually take this book to like DINFOS, was the Defense Information School. And I want to say, here's a resource for new public affairs soldiers to be able to look and use AI to be a force multiplier, ethically, of course.
Right.
There's an entire chapter in this book about the ethical use of AI. And that's what I wanted to, I wanted to give those tools and a step-by-step process and an understanding and how it works and how it is implemented. There's like everything is a step-by-step process in this book. And there's case studies that I put in there. There are links to websites, there are resources, all that stuff. And it's to help small teams, again, civilian, for companies, for small businesses who can't afford social media managers or creators. This is a book for them to increase and, again, multiply their force and make it easier so they can really focus on the things that their time is needed on. So that's why I want to do this, because I Connect last year. One of the best quotes that I heard was,
and that's Cleared Connect.
Cleared Connect,
by Clearance Jobs.
Yeah, by Clearance Jobs. One of the best quotes that I heard was, AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use it will.
Yep.
And so if we're not, especially in the military, which, I mean, there's so many things going on with social media. Social media is not a strong suit of any military branch, really, except for Marines are doing it well. Marines are so good at social media, at content creation. It's amazing. I went because DINFOS for public affairs is joint. So it's every branch goes to the same school. They're all in the same classes, but the Navy and the Marines actually go through consecutively. They do the public affairs, photojournalism course, as well as the broadcast journalism. So they do video and print. But I still don't think that they're implementing a lot of AI tools into the course. And so this book was created to give them a leg up, to give anybody that has a small team of content creators or social media managers a leg up.
And anyone would be able to pick this book up and easily digest it and implement is what I'm hearing. You do not have to be an expert in AI by any means.
Not at all.
To follow this.
Not at all. Anybody can grab this book, pick it up. It's on Amazon, read through it. It gives you tools on how to use AI to measure your success in social media, how to use AI to create a social media strategy, how to implement it using those tools. It gives you a list of tools and what they do. Like this book it's not even that big. It's like, I made it so user-friendly, so compact. I left out all the BS and I'm not going to lie. So for me, I went through 20 years of military service, having undiagnosed ADHD, and AI helped me put this book into order, help me like strategize my thoughts, structure my thoughts, and put it into a digestible format so that I could give this to an editor, and my editor went through and fixed it, and then helped me put it out. And like I said, I've had a lot of people give me, I need more reviews on Amazon, but I've had a lot of people personally tell me that they loved what this book helped them, like just to understand, even if they don't use social media, it helps them understand what's going on in the social media realm and the content creation realm of, using AI. And that's what I appreciate, is the feedback has been so awesome. And yeah, the other thing is, there's a lot of people who have kids that want to be content creators as well, who stream on Twitch or Kick or whatever these platforms are. This is a great gift for them, because kids can't afford, yes, they're really good at social media, but you got to balance, if you want to spend more time, creating the content and less time figuring out how to process it and post it. This is a tool. This is a tool for them.
Yeah. We touched on this earlier, when we were syncing before this, and I relate to everything you're saying. As I'm leaning in more with content creation on LinkedIn, it is very time consuming. As much as you might love it, we all have the same amount of time during the day, 24 hours. If you're sleeping well, probably, 7-8 hours of that is sleeping. So your brain's offline. And I can't wait to read it and, hopefully take away some good tips there. Yeah. And I'll write a good review.
Write an honest review. If you hate it, hate it. But leave an honest review, because that's the one thing I love about being self-publishing a book, is I can go back and I can fix, if there's something that's, I can improve what I've done. I can add to. So that's one thing I love about being a self-published writer. At least for the book. Everything else is on other platforms. But I can make this what I want it to be, and help people, by updating it as well. Yeah.
So you're able to read the feedback, even if it's negative.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Trust me. Public affairs, we have to be, as a writer, you have to be ready to take criticism. Yeah. I've gotten hate mail, which is fine. It's fine. Oh,
which is tough in this digital age. It's tough, right? Because there's real people behind these screens and keyboards, and they have feelings. Okay. I cannot miss out on the opportunity of asking you this question, because I know our viewers are going to want to know, what was the process of creating, this book? You get an idea and you put pen to paper. How do you find a publisher? How long did that process take?
Honestly, so structuring it in my brain, I'm so visual, I have to do things visually. So I had multiple Google Doc, Google Doc tabs open. Yeah. And I started with, the idea of what I wanted to create. And then I broke that down into like topics that became like kind of like my chapters. And then I adjusted those. And then as I went in there, like I broke those down into like subtopics and like kind of like how to, again, I wanted to have parts in there that explained how to do it, like why it works and how it all comes together. Again, cause I'm very visual. Like it's almost like I could have created like a workbook to go along with this because it's so laid out step by step.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's just because that's how I learn and that's how I think is I have to structure things out and list things, you know, after my the IED and the the IED and the rollover I was in, you know, having 2 TBIs, my memory is not at all what it used to be. So I have to use a lot of lists.
Sure.
And so for me, like this started from a list to a bigger list to writing out and adding to subspaces between the list. And then it turned into the book. So,
well, very cool. And thank you for bringing copies with us, but I'm not going to take your copy. I'm going to go buy it on Amazon, read it, and leave an honest review.
Yeah. Publishers are so hard to find, and most of them want between hundreds and possibly like thousands of dollars to publish a book, to edit it, because a lot of them want to do, they want to be in control of the editing, the structure of it. And then also they want to sell you on the marketing for it. Cause obviously they don't want to put the money in on their end if they're not going to make something off of it.
Right.
So for me, as you know, somebody who's never written anything before, and this is obviously a very new topic, and, you know, as you know, trying to guide people through it. I felt more comfortable putting it out there by myself. And then, you know, building on that experience. And then later on, you know, like right now I'm actually working on 2 different books as well. And hopefully at that point, you know, if I want to not self-publish, I'll find a different one to go with. I went to a podcast movement and that was a really awesome, because they had actually a lot of publishers there as well, because I think a lot of what people do as well is they turn their podcast, like research and transcripts, into books as well. So that's something like, as a podcaster, if you're a podcaster, you can turn that content into written content as well. Very cool. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us on Civvies. One last question though for you. And I know we talked about this earlier. A lot of folks, we do not know how to help our military community, our veterans, military spouses. What can we do better on an individual level? Yeah. So I'll start with my nonprofit first. And I'll just say this, like, one thing that I have always said with Shred the Stress is, even if you can't donate to, you know, the cause, it doesn't have to be a monetary donation. It could be time, and something as simple as sharing a post or liking and, you know, sending it to somebody that you think might need it. That's with any nonprofit, not just Shred the Stress. I had an experience one time where I had, you know, I joined a lot of groups when I started Shred the Stress. And one day I was in I think it might've been up actually near here in DC. It was a group, and this person posted in the group, and they said, "Hey, like, I'm a veteran. I'm going through a really tough time right now. Does anybody have an extra one wheel we could meet up and go for a ride and just cruise?" And I was about to like reach out to the person, even though they weren't really close to me. I was going to say, like, "Hey, I can try and find somebody." Right. But as I read through the comments, you know, people, and that's why I love the one wheel and the PEV communities, because people are so amazingly supportive. And one of the comments was, "Have you checked out Shred the Stress?" Oh, very cool. And that was the moment that I knew, like, my passion and my purpose had really like created something special. And again, something as simple as that may have saved that person's life, could save somebody else's. And it doesn't have to be just Shred the Stress. If you're into meditation, you know, look up Mission Flexible or Warrior Strong. They are 2 great ones. They do online yoga and online retreats and online meditation sessions and breath work. Warrior Strong is actually helping me right now do my meditation instructor certification, so I can continue to help the community, help with Shred the Stress. And I was actually flown to a one wheel event this past weekend to give meditation sessions to groups of veterans. And that was, now you're teaching it. Now I'm teaching it. It just gives me so much more purpose. And I'm always willing to answer questions, to help people find correct, you know, possible resources. But yeah, if just suggest resources, if you know somebody in your community who is a veteran who looks like they're struggling, the family of a veteran, because family members, dependents are stressed out also. It's not an easy lifestyle. Veterans, whomever, VFWs, Legions, American Legions, like there's so many places that you can help, volunteer, or just give the contact information to those around you of resources. And that's the best thing we can do, is just be there for each other. Right. And those small acts are enough. They're absolutely enough. Okay. Yeah. And if that's all that you have, like, again, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself, but also it's so easy just to share and send a message to somebody and say, check in on a buddy. Right. I love it.
So Aaron, where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? And where can they learn more about Shred the Stress? This was really cool. I enjoyed it. Thank you. I don't know what's going to happen from here. Yeah. I might have to get one. But tell us where we can find you.
Well, I'll say this, as a veteran, it's always going to be free for you to come and join us and ride. Like, thank you. You can find us at Shred the Stress on almost every platform. shredthestress.org is our website where you can connect with me. But yeah, that's for Shred the Stress. For me, if you want to follow what I'm doing, at Better Actions on a lot of the social media platforms, or you can go to aaronknowlesmedia.com. That's my website that focuses and has links to just about everything that I've done, my writing, Shred the Stress, my leadership program that I'm developing, as well as I'm going to be adding my meditation instruction videos there as well.
Very cool. Bring it in. Yeah. This was a great session.
Appreciate you coming. Oh, thank you so much for having me. So don't judge me if I... Okay, so